close to Kenya. So the adequacy rule, and that's now where this transcription thing would come in and say, as we discussed for Walubengo's data, where is it being saved? And if it's in Europe, well and good. But if it's being saved in Burundi, the data commissioner may have a question or two around it. So those are the thoughts around that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walubengo. And yeah, in these discussions, you can never get like enough every other time, but it's a very good discussion. And I always encourage people, yes, when you see that privacy, there's the privacy, this is our privacy, as long as you're using this app or you're using this, please make sure that you read. Don't just click, I accept, I consent. Yes, because you have no idea how much you are consenting to. But otherwise, thank you very much. Mr. Walubengo is still around if anyone would still have want some questions, but I would like to take the opportunity to invite our next speaker. Cherie, I hope you're here.
Judy, I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. All right, so I would like to take this opportunity to invite Cherie Oyier. She will introduce herself. I know that she's a lawyer, and I know that she loves tech. So she allow her the honor to do that, and also just take us through online gender-based violence. Thank you, Cherie, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Judy. Am I able to share my screen? Give me.
Let me allow you.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, just confirm to me that you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so thank you very much again, Judy, and I've been able to follow Walu's presentation as well, very insightful, and I'm very grateful to be here today to talk to everyone about online gender-based violence. And I'll just proceed. My name is Cherie Oyier. I'm the Programs Officer Women in Digital Rights at KICTANet. And that means that we do a lot of work around online gender-based violence. And even when you
sorry, Judy, she's having echoes. I don't know if it's just my end. Oh yeah, I think you're having echoes. Do you have two devices on? Maybe
no.
you need to disable one.
I don't have two devices. I'm sitting next to Teacher Cherie, probably that is the reason. Let me try and mute.
Oh, Teacher Cherie should disable his mic or something.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, much better.
Okay. That is okay. Thank you. So I'll just proceed into the presentation. So when we talk about online gender-based violence, I usually want to start from a point of just telling the audience that online gender-based violence is not imagined. And when you go on the internet, you'll be able to see, even just from a very preliminary viewing of the internet or any site, you'll be able to see very many instances of online gender-based violence. And I think right now, for instance, on X, on TikTok, because of the situation in the country, I think there's been a lot of unity, and there's honestly been a lesser instances of online gender-based violence. But before that, we've also seen a lot. So if you look at my screen, you'll be able to see some of the tweets that we have taken out of X, formerly Twitter, out of Facebook, for instance, and you can just look through them and see that online gender-based violence is actually a real thing. It's not imagined. Sometimes when you talk about the lived experiences, we also need to, when you talk about the numbers, you need to also accompany them with the lived experiences. And it's very important to showcase the instances where online gender-based violence have been perpetrated on online on online platforms. So for instance, the first one, when you can see, this is against when the CEO of Kenya Tourism Board was appointed, and there was a lot of outcry, and you can tell that instead of focusing on the issues, then the conversation now started to be on her personal life, for instance. These are the things that we look at when looking at online gender-based violence. And the reason why also I put up this slide and these instances is to see that online gender-based violence most of the times also affect women most of the time, disproportionately as compared to men. And unfortunately, also as we're going to be seeing, as we're going to be discussing as well, you'll also see that online gender-based violence is not just perpetrated by men, as usually sometimes is the perception, but it's also perpetrated by women as well. For instance, when you look at the last quote, the one that starts with "Your man, I can't vote," that one was a post by a woman against another woman. So it doesn't mean that men only are the perpetrators. Sometimes it's also women also who are perpetrators of online gender-based violence. But this is just to illustrate that it is not something that is emerging. It's something that's on the online platform, and also because of the way it's very prevalent, sometimes we are desensitized, and even it's mostly on X, for instance, it's just considered as banter now, and not considered as what it is, which is that it is a violence against people on the online platforms. At KICTANet, we do a lot of research, capacity building, multi-stakeholder engagement, and policy advisory. And what we have done in terms of just giving us the knowledge in order to execute the other pillars of our work is the issue of research on online gender-based violence. So when we did a research last year on unmasking trolls on the internet, and what we did with that research was that we realized that most of the research that had been done on online gender-based violence before focused mostly on the women who are based in Nairobi, and also women who are public figures. So that would be your politicians, women journalists, women human rights defenders. But what we wanted to do was get a very wider demographic and also see how online gender-based violence affects women outside of Nairobi, of course, and just generally in Kenya as a whole. So we decentralized that research and did it in other counties as well, and also incorporated other women who are not necessarily public figures. We also went ahead and also included women who were not within the age group that we initially going into the research we assumed would be affected. And most of the assumption at the beginning was that women who are younger would be more affected by online gender-based violence. And so what we found was that women who are older in the rural areas were also affected by online gender-based violence. Actually, they're more affected by online gender-based violence than their younger counterparts. And you can see the statistics from my screen is that 54% of the respondents who took part in the survey had experienced online gender-based violence, and 18% experienced percent of the respondents had experienced online gender-based violence at least several times in a month. That is those are very high numbers.
Has she hand or it's only my side?
It's on my side as well.
Oh, Okay, likely she's been bumped out. My goodness. Yeah, she's been bumped out. Yeah, I saw Mbuk is asking, I think it's where she is. That's why we are getting a lot of feedback from her end. She's in the Youth Internet Governance Forum. And yes, I agree. Today, the internet is something else. Let's see if she'll be able to get back. All right. She's trying to join again. Yeah, where they are, the internet has just dropped, and the bundles is also not responding. Already, I've seen your question. Yeah, Cherie, welcome back. I'll answer you already just before we finish.
Okay. Judy, perhaps you could give me access again to share my screen.
Go ahead, Cherie.
Okay. I hope you can now see my screen again.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So so also from you also did the research also. I'll just proceed from where I left off. In terms of the research that we had done last year on online gender-based violence across the country. We also looked at the social media platforms where online gender-based violence is experienced. And we saw that, for instance, Facebook, WhatsApp were very high. And most of the questions also usually is how come X, which is usually mostly notorious on online gender-based violence, had such low scores. But we also found out that the reason for this was because we also went to the rural areas where Facebook and WhatsApp are mostly used in those areas. Of course, when you come into the urban areas, X is a very popular platform, and therefore it usually builds good and then therefore have very high scores as well. And just that on what you have done, and basically just telling the stories of online gender-based violence and how real it is. But also the question is, what exactly is online gender-based violence? Most people have encountered the term on gender-based violence, for instance, which has existed for a long time. And basically, online gender-based violence is just basically gender-based violence that is committed through the use of technology. So if any act of harm or violence by one or more people that is against another person or more people, and it's usually based on the basis of it is because of the sexual or gender identity of the person that is being harmed. And the use of technologies, and what also comes to mind is online gender-based violence is, there is really not one universally agreed upon definition at this point, considering how not very new, but it's a phenomenon that has evolved with the evolution of technology, and therefore there is really no universally agreed upon definition at this point, but this is a definition that fits it. There's also the question of the people who, instead of using the term online gender-based violence, they also use technology facilitated gender-based violence. And for me, my distinction usually comes in terms of technology facilitated gender-based violence is when technology, for example, an app facilitates, for instance, let's say the way a dating application can be used to connect a perpetrator to a victim, for instance. And online gender-based violence is when the platform is being used for perpetrating online gender-based violence, such as abuses, for instance, or the non-consensual sharing of intimate images that you'll see in later slides as well. And again, online gender-based violence is still evolving, and it's such a wide spectrum of abuses and behaviors when you look at it holistically. And I think that even as you go on, there are questions that have also arisen that we'll need to discuss on, even increasing maybe the spectrum of it in terms of the definitions. What would then fall into online gender-based violence? So for now, some of the prevalent ones that we are seeing is cyber stalking, cyberbullying. Basically, if you know stalking, then just add the online or the technology layer to it, and then that's what it means, using that the technologies and online platforms to perpetrate these offenses. Stalking is basically just maybe surveilling or surveilling or following someone and just making them very uncomfortable. For instance, cyberbullying is just basically bullying using the technology platforms. Online harassment as well. Body shaming is also something that has also we've seen very prevalent on online platforms as well. And usually, again, when you're discussing pertinent issues, then instead of addressing those issues, then for instance, the perpetrator resorts to body shaming. Cyber flashing as well is very prevalent. When I started using Facebook those long years back ago, the cyber flashing, especially from men, for instance, from the Asian continent. I think that is something that also most people have experienced. For instance, you're just opening your inbox and you find someone is cyber flashing you, for instance, which is now an offense. It is not normalized as something that is just common on online platforms. It's now not considered, but it is an offense. Trolling, seen a lot of it, especially for women who are in public positions. They're trolled. If you have an opinion on online platforms, trolling is one of the things that really you are susceptible to. And then the non-consensual sharing of intimate images, which before was wrongly called revenge porn, which now we have to be politically correct and also to be sensitive, is non-consensual sharing of intimate images. That is where, for instance, an ex-lover or someone who has access to intimate images of someone else decides to share them on online platforms for purposes of revenge or just for harm generally. And then doxing is just basically what we have seen, for instance, and maybe draw inference from from what is happening in the country right now, where people are sharing contact details of people, their residential areas as well. So basically sharing information about someone that could be able to, that could allow people to identify them. And then, of course, one of the issues that we have also seen that is mostly prevalent in terms of women who are putting themselves out there for political positions, journalists, women who are using platforms to agitate for rights, for instance, that is gender disinformation and defamation, and basically just spreading false information about these people in order to make them back down from their ideas, or in order to make them back down from what they're saying, for instance. So gender disinformation is very prevalent, and it is really just a weapon to silence women from expressing themselves, exercising their rights to freedom of speech, opinion, and just using the platforms for different purposes. The motivation and intent for perpetrators, I've talked about it maybe summarily before, but usually at the top of it is revenge, jealousy, political agenda, to advance political agendas. It comes out of anger, ideological agenda, where the ideologies are different, and especially when we talk about the issues of our societal norms, where there is patriarchy. So ideologically, a woman should not be able to be using these platforms or even having their voices heard. So most people will be wondering, how are you using these platforms to express yourself to this extent? How are you using these platforms to advance politically? And therefore, that difference in ideology then triggers online gender-based violence. Sexual desire, for instance, people will for instance, you'd see someone making very lewd comments about a woman's body or just anyone, and those are some of the motivation. Monetary need or desire as well. We've seen the exploitation of people and the, for instance, there's instances of sextortion where you have someone's intimate images and you're threatening that if you do not give me X amount of money, then I'll be able to share this online. So these are some of the motivation is also monetary. And then the maintenance of social status. For instance, if a political opponent who wants to maintain that status is in the run with someone who's more popular, they would probably use online gender-based violence, the different forms that I've talked about, to make that their opponent maybe back down. And then the intent is to harm psychologically, and most of the times when we talk about online gender-based violence, the reason why it has not been taken very seriously is because of the imagination that there is no physical harm, because of the fact that it is happening on an online platform. And even law enforcement sometimes don't take it seriously when they are reported to, because there's really the mindset is that there's no harm that has been done to the victim. And therefore, even as you're having those conversations and as you think about it, then also the thoughts about the need for amendments of laws and review of laws to also look into harms that may not be physical but also psychological as well. And of course, when we talk about online gender-based violence, I've said that there's a psychological effect, but the reality is that there are physical harms as well. Physical harms that can arise from the person themselves, who is experiencing great depression because of what they have experienced, anxiety as well. I usually say that from the point of someone not even being able to eat because of the stress that they're experiencing, we've seen influencers like, for instance, women in the public eye, like for instance, as Yad in Kenya, who had come out publicly and said that when she experienced online gender-based violence, in the case between her and Brian Cherie, she was not able to eat. She had anxiety and all that. She was not able to even do her work. So we can also see that there's also physical harm. And when it gets to extreme, sometimes the victims might also self-harm. For instance, they might even take their own lives. In our research, we saw a young person who took their own life because of they were extremely stressed and depressed because of the the online gender-based violence that they experience. And of course, when you talk about that as well, it also comes to the fact that when, for instance, perpetrators already know where you live and where you live, for instance, how they can get access to you, then there's possibility of physical harm as well. The intent is also to enforce the norms, the cultural norms that we are used to. Have said that in a patriarchal setting, for instance, there are those gender roles and those beliefs on what a woman should be able to do, what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to act, how they're supposed to behave, and therefore, the online, when you see the abuse that is happening, it's to put you back into that square, into that box that you have, that that societally we expect someone to be. So just the norm enforcement, instrumentally, just basically to set those standards that we have already decided that this is how things go around here, and there's no changing them, and therefore that is how that is the intent that is required. The effects of online gender-based violence on victims, as I've said, psychologically, stress, anxiety, depression, shame from where there's for instance, the sharing of intimate images, the non-consensual sharing of intimate images, shame from body shaming, for instance, those ones arise, fear of even going back, and therefore that also leads to people being silent and not using the online platforms to express their opinions and views. In most of the trainings that you've done, when you ask participants on whether they are on these online platforms, usually the answer is yes, they're on those platforms. But when you go ahead and ask how many of them are actively using those platforms to express their views, very, very few people usually say that they're using them to express their opinion. So basically, they are just bystanders in those platforms because of the fear that has been inflicted, not only to them, but mostly the fear that has been inflicted because of what they've seen other women going through when they are using those platforms to be very vocal about certain issues. And again, trigger warning, suicidal ideation is also a reality. As I've given that example of Oyier, for instance, who has come out. If you look on online platforms, you'll also see other examples of people who have admitted that they had suicidal ideations once they experience online gender-based violence. Anger and resentment is normal reactions to when you are being victimized, for instance, even on the offline space, and the online space is not an exception. The physical harm, I've also talked about that as well. The suicide, the fact that someone will even self-neglect as well. Those are some of the examples. You've seen people cutting themselves, the psychological effect that now is manifesting on the physical self as well. And then, of course, the issues of harm by perpetrators themselves. And that is why we need to also not only just take it seriously, but also see that that linkage that online offenses or online gender-based violence has a direct link on to physical harm as well. And then, of course, functionality of the functional effect is people, if they're not silent on social media, or they're not limiting their engagement on those platforms, they're actually deleting social media posts. And I've seen even people who are very in the human rights sector still these platforms are the places where they can use to amplify their voices. They holistically just delete those platforms because of the kind of effect that they've experienced, or they have been able to see meted out against other people who are on social media. The social economic loss, we know very well that that online platforms are now not just a place for entertainment, or technology is not just for entertainment and communication, but also a platform where we can also make money, we can also advance economically. We've seen the influencer marketing that has risen, and people also using this platform just to do their businesses. And where they are exposed to online gender-based violence, and they have to leave these platforms or take a break from these platforms, then they are also losing financially, and they have to connect that those harms to the money bit of it. And of course, the issues of ostracization and exclusion from communities when they are body shamed, when they experience, for instance, trolling, when they experience non-consensual sharing of intimate images, that shame also compounds into exclusion from the community. And that also, those are things that we have also seen from the work that you do. And so when you look at all this, it looks very gloomy and it looks very gloomy, but the question is, what next then? What kind of how can we take control back as people using the internet? Because again, we know that the internet has permeated almost all aspects of our lives. And how do we take back that control? Then that would then cause us to recollect on resilience and preventive techniques. KICTANet, we have a lot of trainings on cyber hygiene, on issues of data protection, on issues of on how to protect oneself on online platforms. What we have seen across the board is, for instance, the use of strong and unique passwords for online accounts. So when you talk about, for instance, the issue of non-consensual sharing of intimate images, where they're on or even issues of data, for instance, data about someone, their photos, for instance, videos, where they're on someone's phone, then the use of unique passwords and strong passwords for online accounts, for their Facebook, for their Twitter, whatever it is, it's very helpful in terms in the event of any theft of their devices or any other incidents, then the access to those platforms would be very difficult. And then of course, the multi-factor authentication, whenever possible. We're saying it is not guaranteed that you will not have an incident, but also then if there's, in the event that those incidents occur, then let it be very difficult for a perpetrator to have access to your personal data, to your data generally as well, so that it is very difficult for them to actually perpetrate online gender-based violence in terms of the use of your personal data. And being cautious about sharing personal information online. What you've seen also from across the board is that because of the normalcy that we had before even the Data Protection Act was enacted, we were sharing a lot of information on online platforms. We are seeing a lot of people sharing very sensitive information, for instance, where the apartments are located, where their parents live, about their children, and these ones also just puts you it increases the vulnerability in terms of online gender-based violence as well. And then when we talk about now, you are already in the line of fire in terms of you're experiencing, for instance, trolling, for instance. What we usually advocate for is you take a step back and also stop engaging with the trolls for a while, and also taking those exhibits. For instance, you take screenshots of what is going on those platforms. You block them, you report them to the platform. What you've seen in terms of the reporting mechanisms on the platforms as well is that most people do not actually know how to use or how to activate reporting mechanisms and on those platforms, and therefore most of the times the perpetrators they are not accountable for the actions. But also something very interesting is that reporting mechanisms at KICTANet, we also go through the internet and also see instances of online gender-based violence, and we also report. And what has been very interesting to see and very also concerning is that the platforms do not take they don't take action when we make those when they don't take action when we make those reports, or rather, even if they make them, the periods are very concerning. It's not immediate, and sometimes harm has already occurred. So for instance, you can if you've been on online platforms, if you have been following on the end femicide KE protest as well. There was once just after that protest, there was someone who was sharing about killing his wife and himself. And those tweets were reported. Those tweets were reported, but there was no action that was taken by the platform until he killed himself and his wife as well. And those are some of the concerns that we're having. And the conversations are, how are platforms taking reports from the global south, the global majority seriously? Are they taking them seriously as required, or are they just ignoring this the reports that are also made? So that we're also ensuring that as we're making those reports, then we are assured that action shall be taken by the platforms. And still on resilience reactive techniques, we have a very comprehensive. I know that today we cannot really cover all resilience mechanisms, but KICTANet has curated a very great resource, which is the digital inquiry kit. When you go into our website, you'll be able to see this digital inquiry kit, which is basically a course that provides for ways of ensuring that you're protected online, and how to react and what actions to take when you are exposed to violence on online platforms. So the victims of online gender-based violence can follow these procedures, the access to your personal information, and you find out where the access is coming from, identify the form of abuse as well. You're able to, from when you do the course, you're able to identify the form of abuse, because as I've said, most of the times now when you see on X, for instance, some of the instances of abuse have now been normalized to the extent that they are just called banter. It is just fun and games, but sometimes we now need to understand that some of these things are actually forms of abuse, and therefore this digital inquiry kit will equip you with that kind of knowledge. It also helps you to keep track of everything, like for instance, the collection of evidence. Most of the time, the reason why most people are not able to get justice as well, other than other problems that you also acknowledge are there in the justice system, is that when, for instance, it's very something that quote unquote would be shameful, like for instance, there is sharing of intimate images, the first reaction is to delete those things or ask for deletion without collecting that evidence, taking those screenshots, storing them somewhere so that you can also make those reports, not just the platforms, but also law enforcement. And then, of course, you'll also issues of blocking and muting, and how to report the incident, not to just to the platform, but also to law enforcement. How to follow up in terms of looking for legal representation, and how to follow up in terms of the case, the protection of that case, getting people to support you. You've seen that online gender-based violence has that the prevalent aspect of the harm is the psychological bit. Therefore, there's need for psychological support, and also when we realize the intensity of psychological effect at KICTANet. Now, even when you do the trainings as well, we also incorporate psychosocial support and psychosocial training in our training, so that people are equipped with also how to deal with the psychological effect of online gender-based violence. Of course, how to even advise on not just to get to talk to someone and take care of oneself. And then when you talk about online gender-based violence, I know I've talked about some personal data here and there, but there's that connection between privacy and OGBV. And again, when you talk about when you look at this, most of the times that you're seeing is the correlation between your personal data, your name, your age, the places that you reside, email addresses, images of your photographs and videos. They can also be used by perpetrators to commit online gender-based violence, and therefore it's very important that as you sharing information online, as you're sharing your lives online, because also these platforms, those are the purposes, for instance, but you also have to consider the parameters of what you're sharing, of how much you're sharing. You have to be very keen on ensuring that you also don't share too much, that now you expose yourself to online gender-based violence. We have a lot of laws, and when you see on this list, it's a whole list, and that also we also look at issues of the fragmentation of these laws then, and how difficult it is to harmonize and then implement them. But basically we have the laws that are existing, and if you can look at most of the laws, for instance, 2006 for the Sexual Offences Act, 2011 for the Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilation Act, and that also just points to the fact that most of these laws were enacted a long time ago, and they need to actually be reviewed so as to fit into what is the current situation. So for instance, you will not get like non-consensual sharing of intimate images on any of these laws, for instance. So that means that we need to ensure that these laws are reviewed, because it is then very difficult to hold the perpetrators accountable. What we have done at KICTANet, we have sent a memorandum to Parliament before to and recommended for the review of these laws, for instance, the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, to ensure that different forms of online gender-based violence are incorporated into these laws, so as to have the definitions for we advocating for define the specific crimes in these laws, and then also provide for the fines and the sentences, and also ensuring that the sentences, the fines also are adequate enough to be to ensure that people would not be very easily would not easily commit these offenses. So these are the things that we also are advocating for. And other than that, also considering that online gender-based violence has that aspect of the financial bit, that people would be able to lose in terms of their financial their source of income if they had to leave online platforms. We've also asked for in terms of the review to also not just have a sentence or a sentence as a penalty or fine against the perpetrators, but also compensate financially, monetarily to the victims of online gender-based violence. This one I have already talked about. Clearly, from what I've said, they're not the existing laws are not sufficient. And then what needs to be done to ensure that OGBV is adequately addressed under laws and policies. I've said the work that you've done in terms of the memorandum to Parliament for the review, and also ensuring that even the law enforcement is also the entire legal system, from the law enforcement to the prosecutors, to the lawyers who then represent the prosecutors who represent the victims, to the judicial authorities. We also need capacity building for even psychosocial support from psychologists as well, we are trying to now ensure that they are also incorporated into the legal framework of online gender-based violence. And then the fragmentation and the gaps that you're seeing in the laws are the fragmentation of the laws. There are several laws. It's very difficult to harmonize and then implement them. And what happens is when the laws are too fragmented, is that then perpetrators are able to find loopholes in those laws, and also even look for ways to get charged on in some of the list, to be charged through laws that would then exude lesser fines or sentences. Then, of course, the issue of the lack of definition of the term online gender-based violence, or the different forms of online gender-based violence in our laws. Those ones are limitations that we also experiencing, and also they also impact how the perpetrators are held accountable. And then the laws don't provide a monetary compensation or psychosocial support for victims. This is something that you have addressed in the memorandum. And then the lack of awareness of more current laws, such as the Data Protection Act, that we have also seen as we are doing our work. We're also seeing a lot of lack of awareness or low awareness in terms of data protection, and that also places citizens at in the front line in terms of if you're not aware of these laws and the protections that are in these laws, then also even agitating for your rights to be upheld, then also falls to the cracks. And then the jurisdictional applicability, we know that the internet is open, there are no boundaries, and therefore the fact that we're seeing a lot of the fact that there can be people who are in Kazakhstan committing online gender-based violence against someone in Kenya, and then now that holding them accountable then becomes very difficult. Also, the anonymity that is provided by the internet, and the use of which sometimes is very good, the use of anonymity and the use of, for instance, VPN, for instance, very good sometimes, but also it's basically a two-sided sword in terms of it could cause harm, and it could also cause it could be beneficial, and it could also cause harm in certain circumstances. So those are some of the gaps that you're seeing in the laws. And in order to be able to learn more, this session we cannot cover everything, but these are the resources that we have. I'll be able to share these slides with Judy and the faculty, and then they can also share with you people, everyone else, so that you're able to understand online gender-based violence from in a deeper and more comprehensive way, and also just be able to demystify some of the aspects that we've talked about today. So at KICTANet, we've done a lot of research on online gender-based violence from different aspects. Last year, we did the research on unmasking trolls, research on online gender-based violence in Kenya, which I've talked about extensively during this presentation. We have been in the game for a while, so even as far back as 2010, we are doing research on women and cybercrime, the dark side of ICTs. We have a guidebook on data protection and privacy from a gender perspective. And then we have another guidebook or another research, data protection and privacy, again from a gender perspective, because we also want to mainstream issues of gender into this subjects that would look very general, but we have to have a gender lens from when you're looking at them as well. And again, I was talking about the Digital Inquirer Kit. That is a very comprehensive resource that we also have on the KICTANet website. You can be able to sign up and take that course. It's basically, maybe if you are fast, if you can learn fast, you could take probably maximum 3 hours to do it. Get the required competence to be able to protect yourself online. But also, other than that, also when you take this course, you get a certificate, and you can be a trainer of trainers on issues of online gender-based violence. Thank you very much for your attention and for having me today. I know we had the problem with the internet, but I'm very glad that we were able to get to the end of this presentation. I don't know if it's open for Q&A. Judy, I'll give it back to you for guidance.
Thank you very much, Cherie. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, this is awesome information. We cannot be able to cover everything here, but we completely appreciate your time. I know that this is a very busy week for you, but we totally appreciate you being here. And even as Cherie has said, KICTANet is always available for any questions, for any interaction, even on these issues. Yes, we shall share Mr. Walubengo's presentation that he did with us in the morning, and also Cherie's. And I know there's also Dr. Croker's presentation that Barack will be able to share with you even in the group. And please feel very free that you can raise a question in them any time that you'd like to. So I can see Susan's hand is up. So I will give Susan the opportunity to ask her question.
Thank you, Judy. And yeah, thank you, Cherie, for the presentation. I think for me, I'm quite new to the online gender-based violence conversation, but it's really great to have the foundations, or like a presentation like this to take me through kind of what I need to know. Something interesting that I came across last year was an example, although it's on cyberbullying for kids, it was an interesting example of how technology is being used to facilitate or further these kind of vices. So in Australia, last year, there was the first case of cyberbullying via artificial intelligence. So this is kids' peers, like kids to kids. So kids used AI to generate an image, and then with that image, they continued or proceeded to bully another child. And I believe it was the e-safety commissioner, like a commissioner, basically gave a statement, but also said that tech, basically the tech companies should be able to establish safeguards in terms of what they're developing, their products, etc. And I found it to be interesting in terms of, how do we think about the interventions? There's regulatory gaps, but how do we think about best practices? How do we think about, how we're engaging with like the stakeholders so that they can also on their part, either put in the safeguards or, take various measures to not maybe avoid, to remove, but like to try and mitigate some of these kind of vices or emerging kind of ways that people are going to use the technologies. So yeah, once again, thank you for the presentation, and that was just a comment. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Susan. We appreciate that. Anyone with a question, a comment? Okay, I can see a question from 10 on the chat. Thank you for your presentation, Cherie. Could you comment on the intersectionality between the fight against online gender-based violence and the fight against other vices, as we have seen lately in online conversation, against poor governance and violation of fundamental rights and freedoms?
Okay. Thank you very much, Wanju, and thank you very much, Susan, as well. I like the comment by Susan, and very interesting conversations as well on ethics that these platforms also have to abide by and also come up with in terms of their policies. What are the policies that they have in terms of when how children can access these platforms as well? And I think those are conversations that we are always going to have as we go along. They use, as I said, you can't even say that you can have a holistic definition of all forms of online gender-based violence, because now, again, we're seeing AI entering the chat and the manipulation of images, in manipulation of videos as well. So very interesting as well. We cannot exhaust all of them, but those are continuing conversations. Manjiri, thank you for that question. Very interestingly, yesterday we had this conversation in terms of the lines that we have to establish when we are talking about the use of technologies to advance certain rights and freedoms. So what we have seen lately happening is the use of technology to protect, which is very, very revolutionary, very empowering as well, amplify our voices on those platforms. But also what we have seen on the other hand is the issue that I talked about before of even doxing, and when we had the MPs who had shared, who had voted yes, and had now we're seeing people sharing their intimate images. And very interestingly is what we've seen is that most of them are the women MPs who have been subjected to this. So that also points you to the fact that online gender-based violence disproportionately affects women. But my opinion on this is that even when because I have a background in law, even in terms of when there is war, for instance, there's still those rules on who to attack, and those therefore it means that even in such in the prevailing circumstances, then there are also those fundamental rules that also have to be applied. So, for instance, you have the Data Protection Act that prohibits the sharing of contacts. I mean, we are picketing, and that is not an absolute right. There are also limitations, and that limitation is in the angle of the Data Protection Act. Is as much as you're picketing, as much as you are advancing this cause, then you have to do it within this parameter. So for me, I'm also looking at it in a long-term effect that yes, we want to hold our leaders accountable, but what kind of precedent then would we be setting if we say that we're going to hold them accountable by breaking the laws that we really have? So that would be then my opinion is that we still need to ensure that the laws that are existing, even as we exercise our rights under the Constitution, we still comply with those laws. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Cherie. I can see Caroline's hand, and Alan, please go ahead, be as brief as you can. Thank you. And there's Musa as well.
All right, for me, this is Caroline, yeah?
Yes.
Oh, mine was just a question on that will tie back to DPA, and I think we can think about it broadly. One, if we have the right to be forgotten as data subjects, and then maybe you will write to your Facebooks or Instagrams or whoever to clear your data, but somebody has your screenshots, and then they come up later on the same platforms. Where do I, as a data subject, and maybe my friends will just send me again. I don't know. Do we now hold the Facebooks where I already told them to clear my data? Do we hold them accountable? Where else should someone
Caroline,
get recourse?
I'm so sorry. I dropped off for a minute there.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, I was saying it might tie back to the Data Protection Act or the data protection and privacy policy that you have around. I was asking, let's say as a data subject currently, you can have a right to be forgotten, and then you'll ask somebody, some platform, some big tech to clear your profiles from their servers and everything, and they'll do it. But life being life, somebody has your screenshots and they come up somewhere and maybe your friend shows you, then where do you end up as a data subject? Because you are offline, yes, from that platform, but someone brings it to you and they can show you, like, Caroline, your data is still being used here. Maybe some AI has been used to edit something and you're being trolled. That's one question. I don't know where the data subject lies in that matter, or do we not have a recourse? Secondly, I wanted to ask, and it being that we have quite a number of lawyers here, there's quite a number of laws I'm seeing here, especially the ones that you've displayed towards the end of your presentation. Is there a place where Kenyans can learn how to interpret, or where their rights, as far as law is concerned, the ones that protect them, where they can get an easier interpretation, maybe a forum or something to understand the law? Because it appears there's so much law that protects us, but we are not even aware of it. And here we are discussing about updating our laws. So maybe those two broadly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Very pertinent questions. So I will ask Alan and Musa to ask their questions so that Cherie, you can take them together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cherie, for the presentation. For me, I have like 3 questions which I wanted you to address. The first question is about how cultural and society attitude contribute the prevalences of online gender-based violence. And the other question was about what are some of the legal frameworks that exist on, and how do they address the online gender-based violences? And the last question is about the international cooperations and collaboration. Do they also help in moderating and also maybe in managing these gender-based violences? And which steps do they take to address those issues? And are they beneficial at the end of the day? Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Musa?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Cherie, for this presentation. Mine is actually a comment, not a question. Looking at the slides, the points noted and everything, I think there is a slight alignment, I will say, towards the online gender-based violence and also the general content moderation aspect, being that the moderation platforms, all these social media platforms, do not really specify what gender-based violence is. They only kind of list as a violation. So identifying whether the intent is on a gender, is a gender specific or not, sometimes it's difficult. Only for hate speech. And hate speech is just like an attack on a person or a group of people based on their protected characteristics, not just gender. It can be religion, it can be ethnicity or something like that. So I don't know if maybe there is any attempt to the media platforms or online platforms towards specifying exactly the gender-based violence, because identifying it takes a bit of time with because of not really specifying that as a violation. You can only be able to do that based on this type of research done and also some things like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Musa, for your comment, stroke question. Highly appreciated. Cherie, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think the good thing about questions and comments is really the fact that it provokes the thoughts, even sometimes even widening your perception or from what you thought you knew already. I'll go first to Caroline, and the question of maybe I'll go to the easier question or the question of where can Kenyans learn about laws and how to interpret these laws. So there's the online you can go to Kenya Law Reports where you'll find all the laws, and from even from the list when you go to that website, you'll see how many, there's a lot of laws on different aspects, and therefore you then identify what do you want to learn about, and then maybe do more research on which institutions provide such trainings, for instance. But also what I've also I'm really proud about this whole situation that you have in the country right now, and the things that have also emerged is the use of the creation of solutions. For instance, we have seen the 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 solutions that are similar to ChatGPT or to interpret, for instance, the finance bill, the issues of SHIF as well. And I think as we go along, then we'll be able to, for instance, maybe get more of the solutions to interpret more of the laws that you have as well. But the other very difficult way to learn about these laws is like going to law school, which means maybe 7 years of your life, where I don't think everyone wants to do that as well. But just basically, I think my advice would be to find out the laws that you are interested in. For instance, if it's data protection, and there are a lot of resources from KICTANet, from even the website online on the Data Protection Commissioner's website. And also sometimes following people who are talking about this a lot of these things would be very beneficial. I know Walu here speaks up, writes a lot about AI technology. I as well also do a lot of research and also talk about the work that I do. So it would be very easy to follow them interpreting, because most of the times what we have also learned is to break down in very simple language for everyone who has access to those platforms, for instance, LinkedIn, to be able to follow and understand what you're talking about. The right to be forgotten, the right to erasure under the Data Protection Act is there, that you can ask an entity to erase all your data that they are holding, and they have to do it once you make that request. Unless, for instance, it's on issues of national security, that's the reason of the collecting that data, then there are those parameters that have to be followed. But also, I think the reason I took this this question as the last one is because of the fact that it provoked my thoughts on then what happens when it is not an entity, but also it's just an individual who has as a reservoir or repository of this data that you had before, and now you have deleted an entire what is it called, an entire platform, for instance, a Facebook page or something like that. So the Data Protection Act has those exemptions where the processing of data is for household use. So household use probably would be when an individual is using data, is holding data, because processing includes the storage of that data. So I think that would fall under that. But let's say that person then would use it to perpetrate, like let's say they would use it to troll your body shame you, then that comes into the purview of it's now a criminal, it's now an offense and a harm to you, and therefore then you'd be able to follow it through the necessary channels in law enforcement to have them held accountable. Alan's question on the cultural and social norms. I think what comes is the fact that we are a patriarchal, generally majorly patriarchal society, and therefore those norms and those cultures still seep in even in the online platforms. So we see that a lot of people, in terms of even the responses that we get, in terms of the effects that we have, the effects that it has on them when they see women expressing themselves online, and then the reaction that is coming out of those from those perpetrators, it points to the fact that we're still a very patriarchal community, and therefore this forms those opinions of why are you on this platform, and therefore we're going to use all necessary measures to drive you out or to silence you from this platform. And then the question of the legal frameworks and how they address online gender-based violence, I think I'll connect it with the international framework as well that you asked about, and the issues of online gender-based violence. So we don't necessarily have the reason why we have made that memorandum, we made that the memorandum to Parliament was to ensure, and to the ICT Working Group as well, was to recommend for the definition of online gender-based violence. So we know very well that if an offense, if what we perceive as an offense is not defined in a legal statute, then there's no way you can hold someone accountable. So what we have done is, with the laws that we have that are existing, for instance, the Sexual Offences Act, the Penal Code, we have overstretched them to cover what now amounts to online gender-based violence. But you see, the problem is that they are not sufficient now. They're not really sufficient to address the issues of online gender-based violence, and that is the problem that you are having, and that you have also flagged. And that is what we are saying, that we need to have these offenses now specifically defined in law, so that we are able to hold people accountable, and also people know that these are offenses that already exist. In the international laws and frameworks, there are some that are touch on issues generally of rights and how to uphold those rights, but also still there's that deficiency in terms of the definition of specific definitions of online gender-based violence. Musa, thank you as well for that comment on content moderation and how do platforms identify and define online gender-based violence. I think platforms have that responsibility. They cannot run away from it. They have that responsibility to have community guidelines, to also have ethics on those platforms that say that if this is happening, then you have to take it down within the confines of the laws and within the confines of the community guidelines that have already placed, they've put in place. I think that I hope I have answered every aspect of your questions, and thank you very much once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cherie. Thank you for your time. And thank you very much, everyone, for just being able to sit in despite our erratic internet today. But I'm sure we've all had an opportunity to not only learn, but also to experience. And yes, already when you go to the KICTANet website, the course is known as the Digital Inquirer. And you shall get the info that you're looking for. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our KeSIG 2024. What is now remaining is the final quiz. It's after midday, so I know you can now be able to access it. I know we are having erratic internet connection today. Of course, you have 2 hours, 40 minutes. And as we've always said, please make sure you start when you know that you'll be able to complete it. But just in case your internet is so bad that that does not happen, of course, we will be able to see that on our side, and we will attend to it, or rather give you another opportunity to sit in for that particular quiz. So I would like to invite Barak to please close us off. Once again, thank you very much. It's been a lovely time just to learn with you in this phase. Barak, are you there? Okay. It seems to have been bumped off. So I'll just say on behalf of the faculty and the administration of KeSIG 2024, it's been such an honor to have you on board. It's been such an honor to be able to just learn alongside each other. We still remain available for any questions, and even going forward, if you'd like to change your career, if there's a particular place that you'd like to focus on, we will still be available to even lead and guide whenever it is that we can. Thank you very much, Engineer Obam, even for being able to join us. I think I would like to say, yes, we had senior government officials that we expected in these sessions, but of course, because of what we've seen going on, we were not able to get them, but you will definitely have an opportunity to interact with them in any of the KICTANet events that we normally have, because they are always available. So do not fret about that. So thank you. Thank you once again. Do have a lovely afternoon, and please do take good care of yourself.